We're getting on with this. Chatting away. Okay, right. Good evening, everybody. And welcome to the meeting of South Ribble Borough Council Community and External Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Ange Turner, Chair of the committee, and we'll do introductions in a moment. Some housekeeping for those in the Civic Centre. No fire drills are planned, and if the alarm goes off, please leave by the emergency exits at the back of the room and congregate on the car park. Please turn mobile phones off and switch your microphones off when not speaking. For those joining us via Microsoft Teams, please remain muted and indicate at an appropriate time when you would like to speak, and I will bring you in. We are really grateful to our guests for attending this special Housing Association Question Time themed meeting. Thank you. If we could now do introductions, names and organisations. Please go around the table, committee members first, officers and then guests. So I'll start and we'll go from my right. Welcome for coming along tonight. It's been a long time that this scrutiny committee in all its guises has been trying to get someone from the housing associations to come. So we really appreciate it that you're here tonight. My name is Councillor Ange Turner. I'm an elected member for Penwith and Broadoak Ward, and I'm delighted that you've come along tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Councillor Paul Wharton-Hardman. I'm an elected member for Farrington East and also the Council's lead member for Social Justice and Equality.
Hi, my name is Lou Jackson. I'm the elected member for Ensure Bridge. I sit on the Scrutiny Committee. I'm also allotted to go to Lancashire County Council on the Health and Adult Services Committee there, of which I report back. I'm also the lead for mental health and wellbeing. Thank you.
Hiya, my name's Keith Martin. I represent, along with others, people from Middlefirth and Kingsfold. I'm the lead member for climate change.
Hiya, I'm Leslie Pritchard. I'm the ward member for Lostock Hall.
Good evening, Michael Green. I'm the councillor for Moss Side Ward and acting as a substitute member this evening. I was asked to do it, and then I saw what the agenda was, and I was actually pleased that I'd volunteered because I think the Housing Association do some great work. I know Jackie previously, not met Caroline and Joanne before. It's nice to meet you. I'm also a county councillor, and at the county council I have the portfolio for health and wellbeing, so it fits into this kind of agenda. And on that basis, Chairman, while I'm actually speaking, can I declare a personal interest as well as the county councillor, please? Look forward to the meeting. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Paul Colton. I represent Longton and Hutton West. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Darren Cranshaw, Head of Democratic Services at the Council. Ben Story, Democratic Service Officer.
Glad I've managed that right. Hi everybody. My name's Joanne Danaher. I'm Director of Housing and Home Ownership at Onward Homes.
Hi everybody. I'm Jackie DeRose, Group Chief Exec with Progress Housing Group.
And I'm Caroline Terry. I'm the Head of Supported Housing for Places for People.
Thank you very much and welcome. I'll now move on to the meeting. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Matt Campbell, and as Councillor Green mentioned, he's substituting for Councillor Campbell tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to remind members to declare any interests they may have on the agenda. Are there any interests to declare?
Just the one I've just declared as a county councillor. Sorry, just as a county councillor, Chairman, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Minutes of the last meeting held on Monday the 22nd of January. Members are asked to approve the minutes of that last meeting. Is everybody okay with that meeting? Minutes? Thank you. And now we have our very own question time at South Ribble Borough Council. Again, I'd like to welcome the guests. Joanne, Jackie and Caroline, all representing 3 housing associations who work intimately with this borough. And I'm going to ask each of the representatives here today to introduce themselves again and give us your position, and to give us a brief overview of your terms of reference in the position that you're in and what your housing association provides to the borough. Thank you. I'll start with Joanne, if that's okay. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you. So I'm responsible for housing and home ownership in Onward Homes. My responsibilities cover the whole of Lancashire and the whole of Merseyside. I'm also responsible for our environmental services team, which covers services such as cleaning, window cleaning, grounds maintenance and waste management. And we've just brought those services in-house relatively recently. So just transitioned that service from contractor to an in-house service. Onward has approximately 35,000 properties confined in the northwest, so basically in the northwest, and in Lancashire we've got just short of 7,000 properties, with just short of 350 properties within South Ribble area. We're regulated by the regulator of social housing. A couple of information for you. We're a strategic partner with Homes England. We've got a really ambitious growth plan, and our ambition is to build 5,000 homes by the year 2030. We are currently in partnership with some other organisations, building some new builds within the South Ribble area. And over the next couple of years, we will have increased our stock within the area by 63 properties. We are prime and main focus, obviously, is in enabling people to find a home, live in homes and sustain the tenancies. And with that comes a lot of support. I think we mentioned health and wellbeing, just in relation to making sure that people can access services and get the right support to sustain the tenancies. It's probably fair to say that demand from our customers is really high at the moment, and we've seen an increase in demand and requirements from customers certainly over the last 12 months, which comes with different complexities and different issues. One of the ways that we're dealing with some of that in relation to repairs and maintenance for our organisation is, I mentioned we've brought in services for environmental services. Within Lancashire, we already had our in-house repairs team, but we're expanding that across the other regions. We're expanding that into Greater Manchester, that happened last week, and we'll look to expand that into Merseyside as well. Different tenures, got quite, general needs, sheltered, some supported, and some home ownership. So leaseholders, we have right to buy leaseholders and shared owners as well.
Thank you very much for that. Jackie, I'd just like to tell everybody that Jackie has to leave at 10 to 7, just so you're aware of that. Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, thanks.
Hi then. So yes, I'm here representing Progress Housing Group, which I'm hoping you all are fairly familiar with for lots of reasons, but primarily because our heartland is South Ribble, following the stock transfer, we're 30 years, celebrating 30 years since the stock transfer. So wow, that's gone really fast, and I know a number of you probably were involved in decisions that were made at that time. So we have around 4,000 units in this area, in the northwest, and nationally we have around 12,000 units. So quite a different profile to Onward. And I suppose there's some common themes amongst housing organisations, but we all are a little bit different. So, we come with different qualities and experiences. So our portfolio really and our footprint has been very much driven by 2 stock transfers, South Ribble and Fylde Borough Council. So we've got a very strong local community base and a very long-standing and hopefully ongoing, long-standing relationship with the borough, which I think is demonstrated in how we work in partnership, which I know we'll probably come on to at some point. Our job really is to remember that actually there's a lot of people, over 8.5 million people at this moment in time, who haven't got access to good quality homes in our society. And our job really is to try and help people get access to good quality homes so that they can build good quality lives. So sometimes when we're as a society, we forget that actually there's a lot of people that can't access the open market, either through shared ownership or outright sale. And it's our job to make sure that those people get the best quality housing that they deserve, whether they're a single person, a family, an older person, or someone with support needs. So our philosophy is to try and ensure that we achieve that by offering really good quality housing, continuing to develop. We're a partner with Onward in terms of developing new homes. In this borough, we developed around 130 last year. The vast majority, nearly 100 of those, were for rent and were affordable homes. So whilst we want to do more, it is a really difficult area to carry on doing new build in. It's a high value area. It's a really attractive area, and there's a lot of competition for land. Land tends to be quite highly priced. So some of the challenges that I think we're facing, we need to face together. So I think we're really keen to have more of these sorts of sessions where we can actually say, where are the blockages? What can we do more? How can we work better together in partnership? So I'm really pleased to be here today to be able to do that, have those conversations.
Right, thank you, Jackie, and I'm sure that's our shared objective, is to build a collaborative relationship with you, so that to the benefit of all our residents whose need is there. So I'd now like to ask Caroline Terry to take to the stand. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for having me. So Places for People is a really large organisation, and you've probably heard of us because we're a national company, and we operate from Scotland all the way down to Bristol, and our actual presence within South Ribble is probably smaller than other providers in the room tonight. That said, we are looking to grow. We are currently looking at all of our stock and looking at all of our key sort of heartland areas, and South Ribble being very close to Preston and the work that we do within Preston. We'd probably like to expand that more within the South Ribble area. And I know currently we are actually in negotiation at the moment with regards to building 80 new affordable houses in the South Ribble remit. So my capacity here is I'm head of supported housing, and I deliver a range of supported housing provision on a national basis, from homelessness services, young people's services, and our third-party specialist landlord services, where we own the building and a third party provide the support within that. And that is a key focus of growth for us at PFP, particularly under my remit, is how can we prevent homelessness and really expand, because homelessness is not going anywhere, and it's only going to get worse. So we've got a 5-year strategy of how we're going to tackle that, and we're working through that at the moment. In terms of Places for People, we have 5 business strands. So we have our affordable and supported housing. We also have developments and regeneration, which is where we have our acquisitions pot to be able to purchase property or buy and acquire land to put a range of accommodation on there. Under my remit, in terms of supported housing, we're looking at modular units in 2 or 3 different local authority areas to try and help bridge that gap for temporary accommodation. We also have a property and place management arm of the business, which deals with all our in-house repairs and deals with the assets of our properties. And then we have a fund management, which is really sort of how we make sure we've got enough capital to be able to deliver everything that we want to say we're going to do. and our leisure management. So within the South Ribble area, we have a leisure centre down at Bamber Bridge, and we've got 94, I think, across the length and breadth of the country. And just to put into context the size of PFP, with 240,000 properties. So we are a big organisation. That can sometimes feel for smaller local authorities that's going to get lost in that, and we really want to be able to build those partnerships and work collaboratively. I think from my perspective, we've got a lot of societal issues going on, and one organisation is not going to be able to tackle that on their own. So I'd like to really work in partnership with others to try and do more.
Thank you very much for that overview. You've actually answered the first question that I normally ask as the chair, so we're going to skip that. And we'll and some of the brief summary that you've given us there, the introduction, you've probably answered. So forgive me if you get asked a similar question again. So actually, I'd like to go to the second question, which is actually Councillor Michael Green. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So could you tell us what your governance arrangements are for each of your organisations, please?
So in relation to Onward, we have Onward Group, which is the main group structure. And then in relation to underneath that, we have Onward Homes, we have Onward Living, and we also have Onward Repairs. And then we have another subsidiary, Contour Property Services, which is a management agency for leasehold. So our board is made up of exec directors and non-exec directors who kind of govern the organisation to make sure that we're compliant with the regulator of social housing. And then we have several different streams underneath the board in relation to customer committee, development committee, finance committee, which all feed into the board. And then underneath the customer committee, we have lots and lots of involvement in relation to different strands of customer involvement, making sure that we're feeding through the customer committee so that the board can hear the customer's voice and make sure that we're treating customers fairly. Do you want any more detail, or is that enough? Thank you.
Really easy going second because Joanne said it all. Very similar in that we have a group board overseeing the whole organisation. Generally speaking, they're people who have got a range of skills, lived housing experience, and a pattern of diversity, so that we have the people that we're representing in our communities represented in the board. We have a number of subcommittees, one of which is a tenant scrutiny committee, and we are developing further customer-facing committees to really help develop a strong opportunity for people to give it as warts and all in terms of what they think of our services, how they think we can improve. And that's a really strong emphasis for us moving forward. Our terms of office are fixed. No one could serve more than 6 years. That means there's always opportunity for new people to be involved. And we also work under the regulatory regime with the Regulator of Social Housing and the National Housing Federation's Code of Governance. I think one of the things that we're really keen to do as part of our governance activity is make sure that people hear what we're doing. It's not about PR, it's about transparency. So things that we're doing well, of course, we're going to share, but also things where we need to improve, where we want to really develop our services, where we want to change and improve services to really reflect where people are in their expectations of us as a housing organisation. And that's clearly set within society and some of the reports in the public arena around some of the quality of social housing in particular. And we want to make sure that we're at the forefront of making our offer to customers a really good one, so our tenants feel that they have a voice, and if something's going wrong, they can raise it. We will listen, and we will do our absolute best to put it right. And that's really the philosophy which we're continuing to develop.
Okay, so similar, we have a board, and that is made up of non-exec directors and exec directors, and they are held to account through our scrutiny groups. So we also have a national customer group, and we also underneath that have regional customer groups, so we can galvanise that feedback and utilise that for whatever we want to improve on, or if there's some really poor feedback, then we can make that better, or actually utilise best practice, what's working well. We use that in a number of ways, and from those customer groups we also go out to survey so that we can access a whole range of customers through tenant satisfaction surveys and customer experience, and then we can try and really build on what we're doing. I think in terms of the regional customer groups, they've recently been set up over the last sort of few months, so that's been a bit more of a challenge getting people to come along to those. Sometimes customers really struggle trying to access those kind of meetings, and we're looking at ways that we can make sure that all of our meetings are inclusive for everybody.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jackson, question 3.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for coming to talk to us today. My question is, how effective do you feel your organisations are at meeting the housing needs in South Ribble?
I'll take that first then. I think we recognise that there's enormous demand and need out there, and there's no doubt about it. We need to provide more housing. It is a really challenging area to do that in. I think it's challenging anyway because it's challenging in terms of land availability, grant regimes, and just meeting that ever increasing need in our society. So I think our job is to try and to make sure that we don't introduce unnecessary competition in that process. That actually what we do is we try and maximise the input and the outcome that we can by all working together. So I'm really keen for us to make sure we get the maximum quality and volume out of private developers through Section 106 opportunities. I'm really keen for us to use existing land that we might have in the borough and develop that, and to find new sites as well, and to make sure that actually we work in partnership so that we can deal with both addressing small sites and getting those redeveloped, and larger sites that maybe in the past we've not been able to access because we've got a limited capacity as individual organisations. So I think we will need to continue to do what we've been doing, but actually getting a lot more creative as well around tackling some of the barriers that exist for building more and creating more provision, as well as making sure we invest in our existing stock, because I want to make sure that actually the quality of our existing accommodation doesn't fall behind that of the highest standards of new provision.
I think, just to echo everything that Jackie said there, and it is about working in partnership. I think just one other thing that we've seen, and particularly within the Lancashire region, is that tenancies are being sustained for longer. Now, in one way, that's really positive. That means that we're creating really stable communities. It means that people are happy in their homes. But what that also means is that there's not new, and it saves us money as an organisation because we're not having to do the relets and the relet works. But what that also means is that there isn't homes available for the hundreds of thousands of people on the waiting list. So it is a real challenge. It's an absolute challenge for us. We work really closely with local authorities in relation to choice-based lettings, making sure that we're prioritising the right customers for the right properties. But it is a challenge.
And I think similarly, I'd be very surprised if South Ribble wasn't like every other local authority where there is a real challenge with housing. I think from a PFP perspective, what we've put extreme focus on is ensuring that any empty properties that we've got, we are repurposing them and bringing them back into use, and bringing properties up to a really good standard. And I think going forward, if you can bring those properties up and be quite resourceful in what you're doing, that can really help. And I think sometimes you have to think a little bit creatively. So for us, that's a big area of scrutiny and focus going forward.
Okay.
Could I, sorry, and it might be covered in a future question, but I think it's just really important that we do recognise that we've got increasing homelessness issues. We've got a lot more demand and for temporary accommodation. I don't know any local authority that operates that hasn't got some real challenges there. And then, of course, we've got, potentially fewer vacancies through relets coming along and a limited number of new build. So for me, we have to recognise that's creating a backlog, and as that builds and we take people in the highest need on the waiting list, there's a whole group of people that are just getting no chance of getting to the top. And I have a real concern that actually we're getting to that point where we're literally, it's only those in the extreme housing conditions that are getting access to accommodation, and there's an awful lot of hidden homelessness and overcrowding and other issues for people because they can't move out of the accommodation that they're currently in. So I think we need to think about strategically what that means for the borough and what it means for our planning as partners.
Right, thank you for that. Question 4, Councillor Pritchard. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thanks very much for coming along tonight. I think we've touched on the tenant engagement, but I just wondered if you could give us a little bit more detail on whether you've got plans to actually develop that further and get tenants more involved, please.
So we have an engaged community, and we have lots of different opportunities to get involved. And I think Caroline said sometimes, some customers don't want to get involved in coming to meetings and, attending different things that we open up to our customers. So there's lots of different ways that can get involved. It might be that they want to scrutinise our policies and procedures. We have a scrutiny board that sits under our customer committee. So they will want to look at performance. They might decide an area that they want to focus on, whether that's income or lettings, repairs, different areas there. So that's that formal level. And then we have customers that may want to come on our estate walkabouts. So we have walkabouts within our neighbourhoods. So we'll invite customers along to those. On a neighbourhood level, they tend to be every 6 months. But we do inspections of any communal areas on a monthly basis. And then we have lots of feedback. So if you're a new customer to Onward, you'll get, we'll ask you feedback for how the lettings process was, how the quality of the home was. We'll then get feedback after 6 weeks to say, have you settled in? And then every service that we offer, whether that's repair service, gas safety, grounds maintenance and cleaning, we're getting feedback from customers. So there's lots of different opportunities for customers to get involved. We're always really keen for customers to get involved. I think certainly in Lancashire, the levels at 13%. We've definitely got over 10% of our customers within South Ribble engaged with us within our engaged community, and it's one of the first things that we ask customers when they sign up for a property is, do you want to be involved in that engaged community to help shape services? more recently, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a meeting with our board and our engaged community to bring the board and the engaged community together, because one of the things that the board are really keen on is that they get to hear the customer's voice. So we're tailoring some of our reports to make sure that what our customers are telling us and activities that we do jointly in our neighbourhoods, we're feeding through to the board, and there's transparency there.
Joanne's done all the work. So the only thing I would add is that, I mean, those sorts of structures and feedback processes are very common to certainly all the housing associations that work in this borough and beyond. I think, we recognise, though, that actually it has to be tailored to the locality and the complexities of the issues that a community or a neighbourhood might be facing. So one of the things that we've been doing is we've been again ensuring that tenants have a direct voice in the boardroom, so that actually on a regular basis they face our board members and can say, this is what it's really like. So you've got all these reports, you've got all this feedback, but this is our version of events and how it feels to be a tenant at Progress. And we find that gives us and the board a really good ability to sort of triangulate the information that's coming in and understand where the key issues are and where we might need to improve. We've always had a very strong tenant voice at Progress. It goes with the territory of being a key provider in the area. So that's something that we're really keen to try and encourage people to continue to get involved and have a wide range of people involved as well. People who have got different experiences of living in our communities. So it's a constant battle to try and find new ways to engage and give people that opportunity to say what it is that's needing to be said in whatever mechanism is right for them. So we're really keen to carry on doing that and keep building on that.
If I can just come in there. So what we've done is, and I can speak around our young people. So young people generally want to be reached in a different way, in a different platform. And I think the poor engagement that I talked about earlier comes from different age groups. So we've been reaching out to customers via WhatsApp. We've now gone on Facebook. We've got Instagram pages, much more of that social platforms that we maybe didn't have 5 years ago. And we're seeing better engagement with that. But our young person services have been very much involved with the youth inspectors and helping shaping services. So from a supported housing perspective, they come and tell us what they want to see within those services and how they want to be treated in those services, and provide that real feedback to be able to help us provide accommodation that they want. And I think that's been sort of reinforced with the recent Ofsted regulations as well. So we've almost captured an audience that we maybe didn't previously have. In terms of having that voice, we want all customers to have a voice. So we do have different customer forums for people to come along and say what they want. But I think the youth voice has really taken shape certainly over the last 18 months, and we've had much more engagement that way. I think that's it for now.
Councillor Pritchard,
Yeah.
one supplementary question.
Supplementary.
Yes.
That's, really, really positive. Thank you very much for explaining that. If you were to crystallise a key issue for your tenants in today's current climate, what might that be? And would you be able to sort of tell us a little bit about that?
Well, there's more than one is the answer to that, because we live in a complex world. But tenants say to us, they've given us 4 clear priorities for our work in our communities. They want clean spaces, they want green spaces, they want safe spaces, and they want to feel connected as a community. So our work is very much driven by those priorities that our customers have given us. And behind that, there's lots of activity and detail in order to try and work with our communities, with our tenants, with other agencies to deliver those objectives. But they've been very clear that's what they're wanting us to work on.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coulton, question 5, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, and thank you for attending. There's been a lot of publicity, over quite a long time about the cost of living crisis with food banks, etc., and people really struggling. So what can you do as organisations do to try and make your rents as affordable as possible for your residents? Thank you.
So what we've been doing at Places for People is monitoring everything that we spend. We've been doing value for money exercises in our services and really trying to give the best value for our customers. And that's going to continue because the cost of living is not going to come down, it's only going to increase more. So it's really reviewing the spend that you have within your supported housing or within your remit in terms of costs that you may need to provide for repairs and maintenance costs, things like that. What we've also done is supported our customer group with hardship funds, so that any people that are really struggling can tap into those hardship funds, and that can provide gas and electric vouchers. It can provide like a food parcel. We've set up initiatives where we can sort of recycle school uniforms for families that are struggling to purchase uniforms at sort of school term times. We've hosted a range of sort of initiatives to try and really get the community involved and look at how we can best support them. In terms of challenges at the moment, the gas and the electric has been a real problem for us. And as Jackie alluded to, it's not just one problem. There's many, isn't there, in this sector? I think it's trying to maximise every opportunity on each individual case as well, to see how we can link in with other organisations, try and really support them in getting the right support that they need, maybe to look for employment opportunities or training and education, to try and support where they would ordinarily have maybe been on benefits.
This issue around affordability and cost of living has been very much at the heart of our discussions, and we've been very clear with tenants around understanding what issues they're facing and responding to their personal needs rather than having a sort of standard block offer. So we would call it, a person-centred approach. So basically it's understanding where is it that someone's struggling, how can we assist them in the short term, but also then try and deal with that as a longer term solution. So trying to do the immediate fix, which might be putting people in touch with things like the food banks, but then understanding, is there something more we could do? Are they getting sufficient benefits? Are they getting access to training and development? Is there an issue around childcare? Are there other issues that's preventing them from being able to maximise their income? And at the source of that, we very much start from, we want our rents to be affordable. We don't want to be adding to the burden of cost of living by having unreasonable rent increases. So we always discuss rent levels and rent increases with our tenants before we make our decision around what increases we're going to do. We quite often peg where we increase, particularly around schemes where we've got service charges as well. And we always maximise our procurement punch in terms of if we can get by working together a better deal for our customers on things like gas and electric, we will always use that as an opportunity to keep prices down. So it is something that we are constantly working at. We've also set separate budgets aside so that there is money available to support people in at times of crisis, and we accept that there are some underlying issues that we need to deal with as a society. But actually, if we can provide some support and intervention for individuals, that can sometimes get them over the initial hurdle. And then they've got some space and capacity to think, right, what can I now do? What's now available for me to work at this on a longer term basis? But we also understand for some people using food banks, we've got over 700 of our tenants using food banks on a weekly basis. That isn't going to change in the short term. So we need to keep stocking the food banks. It's some very, very basic support requirements. And we've got to make sure that those services are in place so that support is readily available and people can access that in a way that enables them to at least find some space to tackle the other issues that they've got going on in their lives.
Just add something to that. One thing that I missed off was what we've set up is 2 initiatives. There's a move on in fund and a move on out fund. And our move on in fund is, somebody comes to require a property and they haven't got the funds for maybe a big ticket item. So they've no bed or they've no washing machine. So we will provide them, we'll access that through the fund so that we can try and support them once they've moved into the property. If an individual's coming into supported accommodation and then they're moving on, we have a move on out fund for the same thing. So they can take some of the items that they've got within their flat whilst they're in supported accommodation, but then access a fund for something bigger once they've moved out, or carpets, things like that, because they're the costs, they're the prices of things that our customers can't afford.
Very, very similar in relation to what Jackie and Carolyn said. One of the things that we introduced a couple of years ago was something called Home Plus, and that's it started in Merseyside during COVID. We ran a pilot there, and then we've rolled it out across the organisation. Quite a lot of local authorities were putting pressure on us in relation to furnished tenancies because of what we're saying is that some customers don't have anything at all. But what we find, one, it's quite difficult to administer. But secondly, what that can do is it puts a service charge on the customer's rent account, which usually those customers on housing benefits. That's a burden for the local authority in additional rents. But then what it also does is, we provide support for jobs and training and employment. And then if the customer does go into employment, they've got that high service charge there that they've got for the furnished tenancy. So what we did was we've set a budget, and it's £500,000 budget in the organisation, where we gift. So our top between 7 and 10% customers, that most vulnerable customers that are in real financial difficulty, we gift them a package. And that package is all white goods, beds, blinds, carpets, knives, forks, spoons. We pay the first 2 weeks rent, and we put an additional support in there for 6 weeks to make sure that they can sustain the tenancy. So that's one of the things that we do for our most vulnerable customers. And I think there's definitely been 3 or 4 that we've done within South Ribble over the last 18 months. The other thing as well, we mentioned like the increase in services and inflation, it's at the highest level that it's been. By us bringing services in-house, what that enables us to do is have a little bit more control. So yes, we'll have the pay rises, but some of for example, our grounds maintenance contractor wanted a 25% increase on services. So again, those costs are passed on to our customers through service charges. So what we've been able to do is, by bringing services in-house, is to kind of secure what those service charges are, and probably like our colleagues here, we then cap service charges and subsidise that in areas so that we're not constantly increasing it. But it is a challenge. It's an absolute challenge because at the end of the day, our costs are significantly increasing, and that's it. We get some grant funding for new builds, and we can get some grant funding for different projects for retrofit and things like that. Predominantly, our income is from customers' rents.
Okay. Supplementary question from Councillor Martin.
Hi, thanks for coming. We talked about cost of living, but obviously you have to survive as well. So rent is obviously quite a big income for you, and no doubt you use it to improve services and opportunities. So the question I suppose would be, how would external influences on your rent, say the government or say local indices, impact on that progression of providing better housing and obviously more opportunities to provide housing as well?
It's a massive challenge because we haven't actually got an agreed rent settlement in place. We've had one and it's been wavered from and changed during that time, and it's had a massive impact on our income base, and therefore what we've been able to invest in terms of new stock, existing stock, and those additional services that we've just been talking about. So it's a big challenge for us as a sector, and certainly our representative body, National Housing Federation, and others are campaigning for a longer term rent settlement so that it does give us some stability around our planning and our business plans. Because as you well know, we're making decisions on to develop new accommodation that might take 2 years to actually for that accommodation to come into management, and we've no idea really what either the grant regime or the rent regime might be, and so it is one of the things that we're calling for nationally, and I think a good quality rent settlement would enable stability for organisations, certainty for tenants, which is good for the long term. And it would also enable us to make good quality investment decisions around existing stock and new stock. So it's very important.
Joanne, do you want to? Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. It's really clear that you've all got the residents at the heart of all your decisions. I was really pleased to hear Jackie before talk about person-centred approach to decisions. So it's really nice to hear. In relation to that, what processes are in place to ensure your housing properties are fit for purpose against national standards? How do you feel your properties compare with the standards? And supplementary to that, what are your priorities for investment?
I'll
Jackie,
jump in.
You're going to have to go soon. Okay.
So the quality of our stock is, as I say, it's our top priority. So we want to make sure that we not only meet national standards, but we better national standards. I mean, that's always been where we've come from. So we monitor our decent home standards. We inspect our stock on a regular basis. We have a very responsive service. So if things come in and reported to us, we try and respond quickly. Particularly around issues around things like damp and mould issues. But we also have a proactive service as well. So where we've either not heard from a tenant for a while, or where there's other issues that have come into play, or there's other difficulties that have been experienced by some of our tenants, then we try and coordinate an informed response around that. So some of our data will help us to decide when we invest in stock, and our stock condition surveys will help that. But we always look at it from the point of view of actually what's the individual in the property telling us, and what do we know about that individual's challenges, and whether that might impact on how they're able to use that property and live well in that property. So it's both systems based and people based, if that hopefully makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah, very similar for us. For us, because we've got stock across the whole of the Northwest, a lot of our stock is very, very different. Luckily, within this area, it's relatively new stock. You know, we've got lots of properties in Merseyside that are over 100 years old, that are very difficult to heat, very difficult to maintain, extremely high cost for customers. But we don't have that issue so much. It certainly in Lancashire and not in this area. Very similar to what Jackie said, stock condition surveys, looking at our data. Where we've not been behind somebody's front door, we make sure that we go out and do tenancy audits and tenancy visits. Complaints, customer complaints, you know, none of us like to get complaints or inquiries from councillors. But what that does is gives us insight and makes us react. And again, we look at that data to make sure that, is it a theme? Is it just one person that needs some support? You know, is it, you know, does the customer need some support? Is it the property that's not right? A combination of those things. Is it generally within the area? Is there something that we're not getting right? Compliments, you know, where we're getting things right. We learn from compliments as well as learning from complaints. And obviously we've got the code of practice with the housing ombudsman in relation to where we've not got things right. We're answerable to them to make sure that we put things right.
Yeah, I think both Jackie and Joanne have said almost most of it, but I think again we do the same. We've got a stock condition surveys that get done. What we've done separate outside of what Jackie and Joanne have talked around is we've invested £4 million into a fund called the Get Stuff Done Fund, and that's for those quick wins. So that if somebody goes out on site and then they see that something needs repairing quite quickly, that we can just access that and get it done. So it's outside of our strategic repair programme. That's been really, really widely accepted and was utilised quite quickly last year. So we've actually set up another fund for this year. What we've also done is invested in a lots of handheld devices so that when we're out on site, we can report things quicker. And we've increased our surveyors out on site for damp and mould. And we've started with video technology so that when somebody's out on site, you can actually video what's going on and what needs to be done, and that feeds then into our repairs and maintenance teams. So there's lots going on. You know, I think in terms of our supported housing, in how we address it, we do lots of peer audits. We go out and audit one another's services, make sure that they are to the right standard and that people are satisfied. Again, we take the customer feedback really, really seriously. So we've just over the course of the past 12 months, really enhanced our customer hub, which is dealing with those complaints. And we've got a system where if a customer complains, we've got 24 hours to put something right on the first stage. And then at second stage, it would go to a bit more of an investigation before going to stage 2. And luckily in the South Ribble area, we only have, I think it's 6 stage 1s. Everything else has been dealt with through Put It Right.
Councillor Pritchard, thank you. Question 7.
Caroline, thanks very much for talking about the survey that you're doing for damp and mould. Obviously, there was a tragic incident recently of the young child who passed away, and I wonder whether Jackie and Joanne could tell us a little bit about whether you've got something similar to what Caroline has described.
You know, absolutely. You know, that tragedy kind of changed the way we'd already introduced inspections in relation to damp and mould and reporting cases, but I think that changed the landscape for all providers in relation to that. So yeah, we've got one of the challenges that we've got, and I'd mentioned before about doing stock condition surveys, getting behind the doors where we've not heard from some people, and some people don't want us behind the doors. And what we've had to introduce is a legal process to make sure that we can get behind those doors where customers don't want us, which is not something that we want to go down, absolutely, but it's a tool that we've needed to use in some areas, luckily not this area, to be able to get access to the properties. But it has been challenging. Probably 10 years ago, if somebody phoned up to say they'd got some damp or mould, we'd just say, "Oh, wipe it down. It's tenant's responsibility." Absolutely not our approach. We will go out, we'll make sure that we've done mould washes and then investigate where the damp and moulds come from. But yeah, and when I was saying about demand before, customer demand, there's the customer demand, but then there's also, the demand that we need to react to services a lot quicker. We have had properties with damp and mould. As I said, we've got a lot of older properties in some areas. But once we know about it and we react to it, we'll move people out. We'll move people out into hotels. We've moved people out into other accommodation to make sure that we can deal with it as quickly as possible.
And I would echo what's been said. Really, we absolutely do not want people living in conditions where there's damp and mould, and we will always go out and act very quickly to take an immediate effect action. But also, I think it's about understanding how we've got to that place, what it is that's the underlying issue, and whether there is other intervention and support needed in order to prevent a reoccurrence, really. So our focus has been very much around trying to recognise where people might be at most risk, monitoring existing experiences of damp and mould so we can see actually where there's a pattern, and making sure that we deal with any of the property stuff very quickly, but also the other issues that people might be facing. And it can be anything from people not being able to afford to put the heating on to they've got someone in the household that's incontinent and they're doing a lot of washing, and then they're trying to dry it in the house. So it's about understanding what's happening in people's lives and what we can do to try and do that preventative work so that we change the pattern so it's not reoccurring.
Councillor Coulton, question 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. All your organisations have quite a large footprint. So how do you ensure that individual areas like South Ribble, our needs are met, because it must be difficult for you, I would have thought.
You're absolutely right. And I think, there's lots of different, within our neighbourhoods, we've got over 60, we break our stock down into 3 regions and into 60 neighbourhoods. And within those neighbourhoods, we've got neighbourhood plans, and they are very, very different. So what will our neighbourhood plan for South Ribble will be very different to Preston Avenham. Preston Avenham's very different to Preston North. So they are very different. And the way that we develop those plans and look at what's needed within that area is by looking at our customers, looking who our customers are, what the demographics are, what the stock's like, what the services are like, what partnership relationships we have, where we have to increase those partnerships so we can collaborate better, so that customers within this area, within South Ribble, are getting a service from Onward that's tailored to them. They're not, and this is one of the things about how we set up our engagement structure, because no disrespect, if you're living in the South Ribble, you're not interested in what's happening in Manchester or Merseyside. You're interested in what's happening in your neighbourhood, in your area. So it's tailored plans in relation to the people that live in the area.
Do you have individual staff?
Yeah, so
related to individual areas.
Yeah, so there's
Councillor, sorry to interrupt you. Can I just remind you, we've got so many questions here tonight, if you can come through the chair with a supplementary, because we're running out of time here. Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead anyway.
Yeah, so we have neighbourhood specialists dedicated to neighbourhoods. So Paul Latham's a neighbourhood specialist for South Ribble. And then there's lots of different support teams that support Paul to be able to deliver services, but he's the main point of contact. And then we have neighbourhood delivery managers that manage several neighbourhood specialists that cover several neighbourhoods.
Yeah, so I think from a Places for People's perspective, I think because we're such a large organisation, sometimes you can feel like you've got lost in that. So what we've done is we've reviewed each of our regions. We've broken that down and we've reduced our patch sizes and increased our workforce. So in terms of our place managers, we've increased that so there's a real presence and that they are allocated to each locality to get that regional feel, but then break that down into your different districts. Because I think for us, I think it's understanding the customer more. And that, as Joanne said, somebody from Leyland isn't really interested what's going on in Fylde, and that's really, really helping us provide some really valuable insight into what's going on in each locality. And I think from experience, there's lots of differences and nuances between each local authority anyway. So now it's around building those relationships and really starting to work with each local authority as best we can.
And this is probably very easy for me because the communities are our heartland. So South Ribble is where we are. It's where we're based as an organisation. All our staff teams operate either on the ground in our communities from community hubs or from the office that's 2 minutes down the road. So it is a very community-based service that's delivered by local staff. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Walton-Hardman, question 9.
Thank you. Just performance one here. In relation to performance of repairs, rent collection and managing antisocial behaviour, are there any areas you feel need to be improved and how do you feel you're performing in relation to those?
So I think in terms of all of those, there's definite room for improvement. I think what we've seen over recent months and certainly the past year is our arrears go through the roof because of the cost of living crisis, and obviously there's much more scrutiny on housing benefit payments and things can get delayed with customers. They can then go on to get sanctioned, which is really increasing our arrears. In terms of voids as well, it's around that turnaround time of getting properties back up and ready. And I think where we've seen challenges is with workforce. So the repairs and maintenance workforce has been hit really hard since COVID. But we've gone out, we've done recruitment drives to really improve that and get void turnarounds pretty much back to back. We monitor everything on a weekly basis. So my teams are really sort of focusing on getting rent arrears in and getting that income in to be able to then invest back into the business, not having properties empty because they've not been brought up to a decent standard once somebody's moved out. So there's extreme focus on that. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. I think for the next 12 months, it's going to be even more so than what it's previously been.
Thank you. And I think what I'd add is that, certainly the repairs service is the number one service that our customers want us to get right. We've got a really great in-house team. They've been with us, many of them, for a long time. They know our neighbourhoods, they know our properties, they know our tenants. So we've got really high performance results there. But of course, that team can't do everything. So we need to make sure our contractors meet those high standards as well. And that's an area that we've been very much focused on. antisocial behaviour is another big topic for our tenants. One family or one incident can make a big difference to people's quality of life. So we're really keen to work actively with our tenants in communities to understand where there might be issues and how we can work with partners such as yourself and the police and other support agencies in order to try and change that behaviour and manage that effectively for people, because it can have an enormously bad effect on people's quality of life otherwise. So they are definitely two areas where we know that we cannot afford for that performance to dip, because they're really important issues for our tenants.
Similarly for us, just in relation to void turnaround times, I'm proud to say that this area is one of our more successful areas. We're in top quartile in relation to turning properties round, which obviously then helps people get into homes a lot more quickly. Arrears across the board are challenging. It's challenging collecting arrears. And it's about making sure that customers are supported. We're accessing different funds to be able to provide grants and support to them. Our antisocial behaviour in this area is relatively low, but as Jackie said, you only need one or two, and that's enough to disrupt a community and cause a lot of misery. And our repairs service, we can always improve repairs. And again, grounds maintenance and cleaning services, we're seeing significant improvements, but we expect that to improve. But if you want some statistics and information, more than happy to share those at another date for you.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think Darren will perhaps call you and arrange that, so we appreciate that. Do you still want to ask the original question 9, or because I think partly that has been answered already?
Yes, I don't feel it's necessary.
Right, thank you for that, because we are running out of time. We've still got a lot of questions. So next, Councillor Pritchard, thank you.
Thank you. I think you've probably answered this one. We talked a little while ago about the problems around setting a longer-term the longer-term rent settlement campaign, and we've talked about some of the problems that you're experiencing in our previous question. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about the significant challenges that we've not mentioned tonight that are facing housing associations, or do you think we've covered it?
I'm trying to think what we haven't mentioned. I did mention, I think, the planning and the land availability for new provision. I think the squeeze on waiting lists and housing need we've talked about, which is very important. The challenge around net zero carbon we haven't mentioned, but it is one that we really do need to recognise, because our business plans, we've all got provision in there for addressing that, and different types of property will need different investment to do so. And if we're really going to crack that and make sure that our properties are as efficient as they can be for our residents, then that's going to need enormous amounts of investment, and that may well have an impact on what other offers we can make around the business, and where we stretch that investment, we can only do so much. So all these things are very much interlinked, and I think one of the things that we have said is going to be really important is that we have a housing strategy that works for existing and new provision. I mean, for 20 years or so, we've not had any regeneration funding. I think we need to start talking about regeneration again in a new way, which enables us to really ensure that we invest, and we have the flexibility to invest, whether it be property, environmental, locality, people investment, and really try and draw all that together so that it works together. At the moment, everything's in different pots and at different rates of inquiry. So I think a more cohesive housing strategy would be where I'd be going if I had the power.
Sorry. I think a big challenge for the housing sector is people resource. I think since COVID, we've seen a significant shift in people doing the frontline work. So what us as an organisation are really trying to do is invest in our people, and that is bring out we've brought out the real living wage. We're paying more money to those on the lower paid bandings than senior leaders, and we are putting a whole qualification structure in place so that people are enticed into the sector. I think that shift has come along since COVID, where it's a difficult role, it's a difficult sector to be in, and sometimes I think frontline move on into less challenging roles, should I say. So we're really bringing about that now. Why would somebody want to come into this sector and providing careers for people, not just a job?
What everybody else said, I think just one of the other challenges that we've faced and other organisations will, just in relation to fire safety and the Building Safety Act and the impact that's had in relation to, absolutely right, in relation to keeping people safe. But there's been lots of legislation that's coming quite quickly, although it probably doesn't feel like that sometimes, just in relation to how we manage our high-risk buildings. So buildings over 18 metres have to have a building safety manager, have to have a really strict safety regimes in relation to those buildings, and that comes at a cost, and those costs are service chargeable and passed on to customers. And then for contractors, employing contractors and consultants to be able to do that work, that's a limited resource, in relation to the sector and the industry. And again, that bumps up the costs in relation to getting those people. So that's been a challenge. High-risk buildings over 18 metres, relevant buildings over 11 metres, and then some of our sheltered and supported schemes in relation to changes that we've needed to make, rightly so, but again, comes at a cost.
For that. And as chair, I'm actually going to skip my next question because I think you've broadly answered it, and we are on a time constraint here, and it wouldn't be fair on you guys or to keep you here too much longer, because we have actually gone over our time on this item agenda. However, I'd now like to ask Councillor Lou Jackson to ask question 12. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear from what you're saying, you've got the residents' welfare at heart, and so have we. So my question is, in South Ribble, we have 5 community hubs that work together anyway, in our local communities on their bespoke issues in that area, which may help you when it comes to need in a particular area. So is there any way we might engage more in your work and we can make it easier for you?
Absolutely. I mean, one of our ambitions and one of our strands in our corporate plan is to be more visible in the neighbourhoods. And lots of different offices have closed down within different neighbourhoods. So where there are existing facilities that we can come and do drop-ins and surgeries, more than happy, and we can get the details and then look at which best, where predominantly most of our stock is in the area, more than happy to come and do surgeries because that's the best way for us to find out what's happening in the neighbourhoods.
Yeah, and we'd echo that. I think we're already connected into a number of those hubs, and the more we do that, the better, it is for tenants, because they can access that wider range of services. And sometimes we find that people come in the door for one thing, and actually it's something else that they find is available that can really add value. So I think the more we do around offering a complete catalogue of support and service, an opportunity for people to access that, the better.
And I would say, and I don't operate in this area, but I can speak for a colleague of mine who is the place area manager, who would absolutely welcome being able to work more collaboratively in this area. And it's one of the things that she's asked me to try and get from this evening, if possible. So we would advocate that, really.
Yeah, that's terrific news. Very positive outcome from tonight, besides you 3 meeting each other. Right, I'll now move on to Councillor Pritchard, question 13. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Talking about collaboration, I'm guessing that you guys do obviously collaborate and work together. Could you tell us a little bit about how that works and what engagement you have with each other?
Sorry. It tends to be on both an informal and formal basis, i.e. we have a partnership arrangement for new provision with Homes England that we are a partner. Progress is a partner with Onward. Onward is the lead partner, and we support and develop alongside. So there's some formal arrangements like that, but a lot of it is informally through regional groups and sessions. And whilst we don't know each other, it's because we meet in different groups. So I know. No, but I do know colleagues, and we often talk about both strategic and operational matters and issues, and lots of our staff will work on an operational basis with each other around key issues or key services. But there's always more that we can do, I think, and that's about the added value, isn't it, that we've been talking about, how we can get more out of the same, and we're all going to need to be doing that in future, so I think that's where we can really, sort of add that additional value and additionality for tenants, yeah.
I think a perfect example of that is Councillor Jackson was saying about 5 hubs. There's absolutely no point in us getting 3 neighbourhood specialists at one hub, or 3 of our income teams or financial support teams at one hub. So it's about, how we resource that and work more creatively to collaborate so that we can support each other and the communities. So, we can certainly take that away. But yeah, even though we've not met each other until tonight, our teams do collaborate and work together.
I would pretty much echo the same. I mean, we may not have met, but our teams definitely do. And I'm all about collaboration. And one thing that I can actually say is in Preston, which is one of the services that I do manage, we've got such a network of resource coming in externally, because we can't do it all on our own. We're maybe not the specialists. So I advocate that. And it's something that I think from tonight we can really strengthen in this South Ribble area.
Work that there's already a partnership in place. I go on a regular basis. Others, can go too, and that leads to a number of activities that we can then deliver cohesively through communities. So I think using existing structures and making sure that everyone's connected into those, I think will be really helpful, because the health services connected in, the educational services are in, so it's really important that we maximise those opportunities, I think.
Okay, I'd just like to say, I didn't mean your organisations that you don't integrate. I just meant you, because you did tell me that you'd never met each other personally before. I have an indication that Councillor Michael Green wants to ask a supplementary question. Councillor Green.
Just a quick one for me. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's good to hear about the collaboration, which makes a lot of sense in many ways, but it's a competition as well between the housing associations. I'm guessing there must be, and competition of itself can also be positive in terms of increasing standards and reducing costs and so on.
There is competition. I think traditionally that's been in things like development activity, where we're bidding for sites, and so there is some competition. And I think it's really important that we make sure the competition adds that brings the value for money element, as opposed to means that everybody wastes a lot of time just getting to the same result. So I think, it's our job to make sure that we're sensible about where we compete and where we collaborate. And as a sector, we're really good at sharing often stuff that just would not get shared in the private sector. It'd be extremely confidential, no one would go anywhere near it. And we're happy to share policies, procedures, approaches, staff, quite often, deliver service on behalf of each other. So I think, there's lots of collaboration, much more than competition. And I think that's a good thing, personally.
I absolutely agree. I mean, demand, we're never going to be short of people who need rehousing. So it's not competition there. Absolutely not. But, we benchmark, part of benchmarking groups, and we're absolutely not shy of saying, you're doing really well there. What are you doing? Or we've got a real problem here. We've got a major problem in this area. Have you had it? Let's get our heads, I think one of the things being in housing for, over 28 years, there's always something new. There's always a new challenge. There's always something new. And it's about collaborating and just talking. So yes, we want to be the best. And I think one of the areas that, we're really focusing on as organisation is the customer service. That's we want to make sure that we're providing an excellent customer service. So we've recently all our employees have recently gone through a customer service training programme. We've had an external group of actors come in and really more than happy to share that with you. One of the best training sessions we've ever done. So it's about how we improve internally and benchmark. But yes, we're very good at sharing information.
Okay, thank you. Another question from me before we open it up to other non-committee members who are here tonight, if they may have questions. But however, how can Scrutiny be a resource and help you in your important roles in the future? You've probably answered that partly, so I apologise. But
this scrutiny, the external scrutiny, because we all have internal scrutiny.
External scrutiny, of course, yeah.
Well, I think it's really important. We have external scrutiny in lots of different ways, and it adds value because actually it makes sure that we meet the highest standards. It makes sure that we are transparent and answerable and accountable. So I think any mechanism that gets us to stop, think, is there something better we could do there? Is there something we could do better together? Is there something that we hadn't realised actually that was the impact that we were having, or that's the feedback that an organisation was give us as a stakeholder. All adds enormous value because actually we've got a shared objective. I mean, as a local authority, as a housing provider, as residents, and as customers, we all share. We want to do the very best job we can do and make sure that people in this community are getting the very best service that they can get and have the very best chances that they can have in life. So I think it can help us do that. So it's absolutely wonderful, would be my view.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at it from the same way that I do having an audit. It's a fresh set of eyes at looking at something. Nobody's going to be 100% all of the time, but it's learning from your mistakes and being able to strengthen those, but also looking at the really good work that you do. So I would sort of echo what Jackie says. It's really, really important.
Okay.
I won't repeat everything that everybody said. Just obviously we've got the new consumer standards coming in, which, consumer standards about transparency, accountability. So we've got that scrutiny as well. But yeah, absolutely welcome any feedback that will help us improve services.
Right, thank you. Right, I'd now like to ask if there's any questions from other councillors who are not on the committee. Councillor Williams, would you like? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening. My name's Hayden Williams. I'm councillor for Leyland Central, and I've been appointed the chair of a homelessness scrutiny task group to look specifically at the issue of homelessness within the council, our procedures and how we can work with external organisations and agencies, and see if there's any best practice we can pick up and look at the issue a bit more closely. So I've got a few questions. I've been listening there's been some brilliant answers given to some of the questions that we've got, but I've got a couple of specific questions around one question about service charges. It's an issue around affordability and service charges is definitely one of them. And it's been mentioned that some national legislation contributes towards this and obviously costs that would ever go into this. Whilst rents are are regulated, and there's a certain amount you can put rents up by. Service charges aren't regulated, and a lot of residents haven't got the opportunity to be able to increase their income to cope with it, especially pensioners. How can you ensure that increases are affordable, or would some kind of regulation in this area help protect tenants from large increases, or could it be tackled in a different way?
Well, I think service charges is an issue. It's very much central to our decisions around rent setting. I think I referenced earlier on that we always look at affordability, looking at rent and service charge. So we always try and ensure that we make decisions that recognise the impact of service charges and rents on individuals, and do analysis on real cases, so that that can be demonstrated. So people who are involved in making decisions about rent increases and service charges know exactly what the impact will be on individuals. The thing we also do is we talk to tenants about service charges. We minimise the cost of service charges through procurement mechanisms, but we also say, are there some services that we could remove, that if they're not needed, how do we keep the charges as low as possible? So it's fluid, and there is regulation around service charges, and we have to demonstrate that real costs are being charged, and that we have developed mechanisms to minimise those and get good value for money. So we work very hard to keep service charges as low as possible, and where services aren't needed, we'll take steps to remove them. But only with obviously the consent of tenants. So for me, I think we do act in a very responsible manner around service charges, but I do understand where the concern comes from, and I do also recognise that for tenants, it feels like they're getting 2 increases, and so our job is to try and ensure the overall increase is affordable.
Thanks, Jackie. I'll echo exactly what Jackie said. Our service charges have to be set at a reasonable rate, and I think we've done exactly what Jackie said. So, for example, when we brought services in-house for window cleaning, we used to clean windows every month. We did a survey with our customers. We now clean them every other month to reduce service charge costs. And again, with our internal cleaning and our grounds maintenance, looking at how we can maintain those costs and keep costs down. One of the real challenges, certainly for our customers in sheltered schemes, was the increase in utility costs. And our majority of our customers are on fixed service charges, so we fix our service charges for the year, and that was an absolute challenge in relation to those costs for customers in sheltered schemes. What we've done, like Jackie says, we have consultations now. So we this year, prior to sending out a service charge and rent increase letters, we had meetings within all our sheltered schemes so that we could go out and explain what those costs were, and then also get our money advice and financial inclusion teams there to support customers to make sure that they were maximising their income and their benefits.
Absolutely the same as what both Joanne and Jackie do. I think last year, where we saw unprecedented increases with gas and electric, Places for People did a cap so that those that were the most vulnerable could afford to stay where they were and not be worried by the challenges that these increases brought. We've also really sort of strengthened our position around our money advice team and had that financial inclusion. But again, every customer that we've had, we've consulted with, and we've talked through and looked at areas where we can reduce costs to make way for those that are out of our control.
Councillor Williams, if you've got any further questions, can you come through the chair? The reason being is I have no idea how many questions you have, and we are on a schedule here. So you've got another question?
Yeah, I've got, depending on time. There's might be a shorter answer. One thing that's come up in what we're talking about is hidden homelessness. and overcrowding. And that's an interesting thing to talk about. Can you tell me more about it? What's your definition of this? How widespread is the problem, and how can this lead on to more crisis homelessness that people at the council have to deal with in a crisis?
Yeah, I think I'll come in there. I think the biggest challenge that we face at the moment is we don't have the data, because if it's hidden, you don't know about it. So therefore, that's a real challenge for local authorities, because they don't know how many people are sofa surfing, staying with families in overcrowded properties. So getting the data right is probably key. The biggest challenge I think that we face as a society is that we're one pay packet away from homelessness ourselves. So that could be anybody in this room. And therefore, the figures are only going to continue to increase as finances get tighter. So I think that, we need to understand what data we've got coming through. We need to look more at prevention and trying to stop people ending up in that situation. And prevention services have reduced drastically over the last decade, and we need to try and keep people in the right homes before they end up in that situation.
It is a problem. It's an issue for us. What we have done is we've looked where people are under occupying to offer incentives for them to move into the right size property, so that frees up family accommodation for some people who need it. But as Caroline said, people don't tell us because they think they're going to get in trouble. They'll have a tenancy agreement that says this property is for 5 people. There might be 8 people in there, so they don't tell us with fear, thinking, "Oh, I'm breaching my tenancy agreement." The challenge that we've got is when they do tell us, there isn't the stock available for them to move on to. So it's a massive challenge for all of us. One that we absolutely can't solve ourselves.
And I would welcome our involvement in the committee and activity that you're heading up. To be honest, our team have prevented 350 cases of homelessness this year by intervention. If we don't do that, those people are going to appear as cases that then go into the crisis provision, and we know that outreach work and preventative work is really important, and yet there's very, very little funding for it. So I think the more we can do to work together around helping people to not get into that moment of crisis and supporting people so that they've got some stability and they can move through the system in a more controlled and stable manner, will help everyone, because I don't know anyone that we've met, certainly, that's ever chosen to be homeless. So it's if there's anything we can do to prevent that, I think we absolutely should. But then we do know that those crisis moments will come, and I think we have to make sure we've got the right amount and right type of temporary accommodation, the right move-on accommodation, right permanent accommodation as well. So I think having a look at that in a holistic fashion with partners would be a really good thing, and I'm really pleased that that's what's going to be happening.
Right, Councillor Williams, do you have another question?
I know, just going to say thank you, and we'll be in contact shortly to discuss this further in a different environment. Thank you. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Is there any other councillors that have a question? Councillor Hunter.
It's not really a question. So I'm the Cabinet Member for Communities, Leisure and Wellbeing. So I work with housing, is under my portfolio. So I'm just saying thank you tonight. Some really good ideas have come out, especially working with the local hubs and the task force. So we'll obviously be in touch, get those set up. We do quite a few community networking, which would be fantastic for the housing to get on board and come and see, the community, let them ask questions. So just thank you so much for coming tonight, and it's been quite enlightening. Thank you.
Right, okay, thank you. I don't think there are any other further questions. First of all, as the chair of the committee, I'd like to thank you for coming along tonight. We are extremely grateful. It's a major, as I said earlier when I was talking to you individually, it's probably got to be one of the biggest crises in this country, housing. So we really appreciate your time. I know you've probably come straight from work. I was going to make that the final point anyway, because it's not fair on you guys. And I just feel, as a result of this, I feel that our there's a new or an extended collaboration here, which we can work on, and in the interests of our residents. So, thank you so much for coming along, having a note passed to me. Yeah, of course. I know. I'm not. Right. Okay. Yeah. So thank you so much. We all really appreciate it. Thank you. I'm just going to ask the officer now to give us a list of recommendations that have come out from our discussion, and then you're free to go. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just some of the things from tonight that the committee might like to recommend. The committee thanks the senior representatives of housing associations for attending and answering questions. The committee commends the work of housing associations in South Ribble and the positive contribution they make to our communities. The committee welcomes the approach taken to customer and tenant engagement. The committee feels reassured on the proactive approach being taken to dampness and mould in properties. The committee encourages housing associations to strengthen links to the council's community hubs. And finally, the committee looks forward to working with the housing associations in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you very much. Right. Sorry, Councillor Green, you have a question?
It's a comment, Chairman. Really important item, and just on those recommendations. Whilst I'm not normally a member of this committee, although who knows, from me I might be. But on the last recommendation, I think it's important that we actually ask them to appear on a regular basis, so we keep that working relationship open. As and when issues arise, they can be dealt with. Yeah,
I think we did discuss this in the pre-meeting before you came, that all the committee members agreed that it is, I suppose, it's been difficult to get these people or representatives of these housing associations to come in the past because of probably the controversy of the subject. And obviously, I think we might have a similar problem with the United Utilities, but with regards to the sewage. It'd be great if they do come, but we'll see. But we did talk about this before, that we want to build up a collaboration with these people. We don't want to frighten them off. So, and I think actually my view of tonight is this has been extremely successful. And I felt that we had a really good environment and a really good open conversation with them. And I feel we've got some connection with them that we didn't have before, and that's due to all the questions from the committee members. And I think we've achieved something here. I feel as a step. Councillor Jackson.
I think from what you've said, we've broke through a meniscus. You know, there's lots of times when maybe there's fears or concerns about taking that one step forward to meeting people, but we've done that tonight. So hopefully there's going to be lots of positive work done, and especially if we're able to enable them to work more with the hubs, because they're right there where the action is and they know exactly what the problems are and bespoke to particular areas.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Jackson. They were very useful. I think we all feel very positive about that. I think everyone behaved really well, if you don't mind me saying, as the chair. Okay, we'll move on to item 5, which is scrutiny matters arising. Do we have any scrutiny matters arising? Yes. Which item? That's item 5A. Yeah, I haven't got onto that yet.
Item 5 is the overall item, which is then subset into A.
All right, I'm sorry. Okay, right, okay, so there aren't any. So we'll move on to item 5A. Thank you, Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just a brief update on the meeting that we had on Monday with the Director of let me make sure I get the title right, the Director of Communities and the Head of Communities and Housing. It was a really productive, really informative meeting. I think we all felt that we benefited from listening to the officers. And I'm just going to pull out some key points that we talked about. One of those was that there was an agreement by everybody attending the meeting that we need to be data driven, so that when we are focusing our attention on areas affected by deprivation, we are doing so because the data tells us that's where we need to look. Having said that, we also want councillors across the authority to review our evidence when we are at a stage to present it and tell us whether there's anything within their wards that is particularly important to them that hasn't come out in that. So it's really important to get that information. A second sort of headline topic, we talked around health inequalities in relation to housing. We talked about the effect that the condition of a house can have on people's health, and we've talked at length about that tonight. So, and that was really, really interesting. But also the other issue was the affordability of private sector housing and the fact that it's so expensive that a lot of people are now looking for social housing, looking to move into some of our partners' houses, and obviously there's waiting lists for that. So it's affordability alongside the condition of housing that we focused on. As referenced tonight by some of our guests, the cost of living crisis isn't going anywhere soon, and we also spoke about the challenges that has on our communities, especially with the withdrawing of the Housing Support Fund in September and the impact that that's going to have on communities who would have benefited from that income. And that's going to be a challenge really on how to support those families. And I think that's where this closer working relationship with the guests tonight will be really important. We're very, very, very fortunate in South Ribble that we have a social prescribing service, and we spoke at length about the work of that team in providing individualised support packages for people, which can be transformative and at times potentially life-saving. And I don't think we can underestimate how important that is. And with the team being able to help people, not just signposting the service, although that is really important, but to provide this bespoke offer, we are lucky to have that. Access to services is hugely important across the whole of the borough. We talked about rural and rurality and access to services in our outlying communities, and the information bus that has recently done the rounds of the borough. We were told some of the case studies from that, which was really, really interesting. People who may not have come into the civic centre, but they talked to staff on the bus. So we would like to see that possibly when it's rolled out again, sort of going into the rural communities. Effective partnership, say no more. That's what this has all been about tonight. But we spoke at length about the volunteering community and faith sector, who are the bedrock of our communities, and very often providing services to people when they are really, really short of volunteers. And we know this is becoming an issue within society as a whole. Volunteers are getting older, younger volunteers aren't coming through. And one of the things that we discussed was how our hubs can potentially look at their areas and then think about what problems that some of the volunteering community sector and faith sector groups have, and whether if it is an issue around volunteering, what can we do to promote that within our community. And I think that's the headlines, I think, folks. I think that's it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions to Councillor Pritchard? Councillor Wharton-Harpen, please.
Thank you. I think it's a really fantastic piece of work, particularly with some of the health inequalities we have in some of our areas of deprivation in South Ribble. One of the things I think which has come out of tonight, which I think would be really useful, is just to wonder if you've looked at any alternative communication methods. I think Caroline highlighted regards to particularly targeting younger people, and we tend to, not always, but tend to always look at the older people in our population who need support. And the younger communities don't always look at the normal communication methods we use. So obviously, Caroline, I think, mentioned TikTok, Instagram, various other things. Have we looked at alternative methods of communication to let people know who need our support that there is support there?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wharton-Harbin. I totally agree. And I think that is something that moving forward we should definitely look at. And I'd like to draw on your expertise in that area, because I know you're very, very good on that, on the old TikTok. And but yeah, it's you're absolutely right. The we've been told this time and time again that Facebook isn't going to cut it, and TikTok and Instagram are where the younger people are accessing the information. So personally, I don't use either. I need some training in that to be able to use it. So maybe that's something we can talk about at a future meeting. But thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lou Jackson, please. Lancashire County Council Health Scrutiny Committee update. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to give a summary of the Lancashire County Council Health and Adult Services Committee meeting that was held on the 20th of March 2024. I'd like to say I wasn't in attendance, but I put together this summary. Attending there that day was County Councillor Graham Gooch, who's Cabinet Member for Adult Services. There was Principal Social Worker Joanne Reid. There was Head of Business Development and Adult Social Care Strategic Workforce Lead. There was a Public Health Specialist and Director of People and Place Programmes. They got together and attended to discuss an overview of the workforce strategy for adult and social care and the NHS. Their reports give information on an adult social care academy, the Integrated Care Board workforce strategy, and integrated care within the NHS. They gave information on the sickness of employees and support services that are available to them, and a carer development framework. I picked up one question from the members of the committee that day, because concerns were raised, really important, over the average number of sick days taken by employees in adult social care. Members were informed of a workforce strategy to improve sickness rates in adult social care. Concerns were raised about 90% of occupational therapy positions were vacant, and there were many reasons for sicknesses. There are significant recruitment challenges. This was brought up, and how adult social care could not permanently rely on agency staff. And it was resolved to support employees with early intervention practices with regard to mental health, and to use analysis and feedback to ensure the appropriate level of support. The use of a strategy for communicating with staff and a re-entry interview. Mental health is underpinned by the Mental Health Act of 1988. There are a number of initiatives in place with mental health champions and mental health first aiders in place now. There was a report from the Health Scrutiny Steering Group that provided an update on the Community National Health Service Mental Health Transformation Programme. And this contained information on inpatient bed capacity in Lancashire. It was noted that the info noted that capacity was steadily increasing. However, challenges were faced on patients' length of stay. Out of area placements had decreased, so there was a decrease in spending, and there'd been an improved staff turnover. The Health and Adult Services Scrutiny Committee and Steering Group Work Programme for 20 23 and 24 was resolved to be noted. Date of the next meeting was 8th of May, and to be discussed then would be the new hospitals programme, clinical refiguration, virtual wards, and the integrated neighbourhood teams update. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jackson. What's this question relating to?
It's just in relation to this report, Chair.
Right, okay.
Do we have any input to provide information to Lancashire County Council with regards to areas to explore? For example, mental health obviously is a big issue and was highlighted by Councillor Jackson there. And obviously, it'd be really interesting to see if they were willing, or whether we would be willing to look at the cost of living crisis, health inequalities, and the increase in mental health cases.
Well, I can't answer that question. I'm not. Are you asking Councillor Jackson that? I'm
just wondering if there's any mechanisms for local authorities such as ourselves to feed that back to Lancashire County Council, the possible area.
Sorry, Darren, do you know? Please help me out.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Jackson's probably in the best position because she represents the whole council on the Health and Adult Services Scrutiny Committee County. I know they do work planning sessions and agenda settings, so it might be an opportunity for Councillor Jackson to actually raise that with County. But also in what Councillor Wharton mentioned in some of his points, certainly something Councillor Pritchard, as chair of the task group looking at inequalities, might look at because it all is interrelated. So I'd suggest those were the ways of making those input forward. Moving it forward.
And I'd just like to say, we explore any avenues for sharing data and for making our work more effective. And one of the ways I see that is more communication between different levels.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this. Now move on to the next sub-item, meetings and training attended by Scrutiny Committee. Members are invited to provide feedback on any courses they have attended. Do any members have any feedback, please? Councillor Pritchard, thank you.
Yeah. Can I just check, is this training with regards to scrutiny or in general? This, in terms of the training? Right, sorry, no, I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay, right, thank you for that. So with that, I'll... Councillor Jackson, sorry.
Oh, Chair, thanks for letting me come in there. If it's training in general, we recently had the planning enforcement, which I found really interesting, especially when applying to, gathering the information and not actually speaking about what's happening in my ward, but it really increased our knowledge generally as a group.
I wanted to go to that, but I couldn't make it that evening, but anything like that sounds interesting as well anyway, doesn't it? Right, okay, so with that, I'll end the meeting. Thank you everybody for attending, and it's great to finish on a high note for this municipal year where we've had an excellent discussion, question time with the three senior business managers of the three housing companies. I think it's great that we got them here, and I hope they feel okay, and it's not friendly fire to come and see us again. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you.